Hello, my brother. Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. I've got a question for you. Would you like to have more energy? That's probably one of the easiest yes-no questions that you'll ever have to answer. Of course, you want more energy. Unless you are a 5-year-old child who has just devoured a bag of Skittles, chances are you want more energy. But the question that most people don't really know the answer to is, what kind of energy would you want? And then if you had that energy, what would you use it for? Those are deeper questions that require a little bit more reflection. And that's why I wanted to build off of the podcast that we released on Wednesday, which is accessing your greatest energy, by following up with this conversation about the 4 dimensions of energy that really give some structure to the kinds of energy sources that exist in your life, so you can see where you're rocking it and also where you may be deficient. And this is going to be a bit of an interactive podcast, I suppose, because at the end of each of the 4 dimensions, I'm going to ask you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how much energy you have in each of those 4 dimensions. Now, I want to give proper credit where credit is due. I learned about these 4 dimensions of energy by reading the book, The Only Way to Win by Jim Loehr, who at the time, I'm not sure if he still is, was the president of the Human Performance Institute in Orlando, Florida. Now, I went down and studied with the Human Performance Institute back in 2014 and 2015 when Prudential had contracted with them about how to optimize energy. Because energized employees are a more engaged workforce gives discretionary effort, the business gets better output. So I think I took about 2 or 3 trips down to the Human Performance Institute. They work with a lot of the special forces of the military. They've coached number 1 tennis players in the world, golfers. So I was about to say golf players. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about right now. It looks like I could use more mental energy at this point. So I've done some deep work with them. They certified me to become a trainer. I taught, I think, about 6 months worth of courses at Prudential Retirement, my last 6 months on the job there before I decided to leave and start this. So the 4 dimensions of energy have been something that have been at the center of my life for the past 5 years. And every time I have this conversation with people, it's one of the simplest models and one of the easiest to wrap your brain around and one of the quickest ways that you can make changes to optimizing your energy in your daily life. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to introduce the pyramid, the 4 dimensions of energy, and each of the layers of the pyramid from the bottom to the top. And then I'm going to do a deeper dive into each of those arenas. So at the bottom level of the pyramid, the first dimension of energy is your physical energy. This is the quantity of energy that you have. The next layer up is the emotional energy source. And this is the quality of energy, right? So at the bottom, first layer, physical energy, quantity. Second layer, emotional energy, quality. The third layer up is mental energy, which is the focus of your energy. And then the top of the pyramid is your spiritual energy, which is the force behind your energy. And it doesn't necessarily mean religion. Actually, in this context, it doesn't mean religion, even though if you are religious, it could be a source of your spiritual energy. But it really means that you have energy coming from a sense of purpose, deeper meaning. So we're going to dive into each of these dimensions to give you a deeper understanding of what are the components, what comprise of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual energy. All right. So the way that the Human Performance Institute breaks it down is the physical energy, which is the quantity of your energy, has 3 sources. Number 1, nutrition. Number 2, movement. And number 3, recovery. So nutrition, this is all the stuff that you eat, everything that you consume. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian, but you know that garbage in, garbage out, quality in, quality out, like that's energy. Our energy is dictated in large part to what we consume on a daily basis. And probably at a future point, I'm going to have on someone who's like a top flight nutritionist. I think Max Lugavere, who wrote Genius Foods, would be a great person to bring on the show for you. And he's someone who I've met a few times. So setting the intention to bring him on the show. The second thing that contributes to your physical energy is movement. So we tend to pigeonhole movement into exercise. Exercise is a great form of movement, but it's just one. Movement can also be breath work. Movement can be walking. Movement can be yoga. And as we are in this sedentary lifestyle, even before COVID, sitting in our offices for 8 to 10 hours a day in front of a computer, sitting in cars, trains, planes, just sitting on our asses all day long, we don't have a lot of blood circulating in our body, which is carrying the oxygen to the different parts of our body, whether it's our extremities or our brain, that we need to function on a regular basis. So that's why it's super important that we make movement a conscious part of our daily, hourly practice. So that's not just pigeonholed into, one 30-minute exercise routine during the day. And then finally, the place that I tend to spend most of my time when I talk about physical energy is this third arena of recovery. Because I know you guys are hard charging, achievement oriented, get shit done, full to-do list, all the time, and feel guilty when you take downtime because you feel like it's, you're letting time slip through your fingers. Something could have been done. Something could have been achieved. A to-do could have been knocked off the list. And what I like to remind people who are super busy is that you are never going to get on top of everything. You're never going to. There's never going to be a day where you're going to be like, that's it. It's done. Everything that I'm responsible for, I'm actually finished with. It's never going to happen. We need to reorient our minds and our mindsets around the fact that, hey, like life, the way that we live it, it breeds more life than we can physically sustain most of the time. So we have to be good with recognizing that recovery is an essential part to creating the quantity, the physical energy that we need in order to get the most important things done in our life. And it's only been over the past 5 years since I really learned about like this recovery, and the Human Performance Institute puts a huge emphasis on recovery, whether it's taking a nap or a 15-minute meditation or a 5-minute meditation during the day, whether it's taking 2 days off of the week from working out, where I used to be like a 6 or 7 day a week guy because I felt like I had to. And those days that I take off, those times that I take off, I feel guilt-free now because I know my battery pack, my power pack is going up to 100. So then when I show back up for these big things that I take on in life, whether it's, a keynote speech or a 100 push-up challenge or writing a second book, soon to be a third book, launching a mastermind where I'm running a group of 21 men, that I have the gas in my tank, not just to show up, but to be the best version of myself. So physical energy is comprised of nutrition, of movement, and of recovery, and having conscious strategies for each of them. Now, the reason why the physical energy is at the bottom of the pyramid, it's like the base of the pyramid, because if the quantity of your energy isn't expanded, if you haven't been sleeping, if you've been eating like garbage, if you've been burning the candle at both ends, think about your base of the pyramid just shrinking and getting narrower and narrower, which means as you go up the rungs of the pyramid, right? Like emotional, mental, and then spiritual energy, those all decrease as well. So the fastest way that I have found in coaching my clients to optimizing all levels of their energy is by addressing the physical arena first. If you can get that down first, it like rises the tide for all of the other boats that lay on top of it. All right. Second layer up. Actually, hold on. Before I go there, what I'd like you to do now is to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate your physical energy right now? Scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate your physical energy? 1 being I'm sucking at those 3 categories, 10 being like I'm rocking it on all of them. So give yourself a rating on 1 through 10 and remember that number. Write it down somewhere. The second dimension of energy is the emotional energy. This is the quality of your energy, right? So maybe you're well rested, all the greatest inputs in the world, maybe you're moving regularly, but your emotional energy is for shit because you're negative, or like you always focus on what's wrong, or maybe someone tweaked you and you're in a state of anger right now, right? That's going to have a dramatic impact on how you feel, how your energy feels. So there's really 2 types of emotional energy. Quite simple. Negative energy negative emotions and positive emotions. And I'm very clear not to state that they're good or bad because we are human. We are going to experience the full range of human emotions throughout our life as long as we don't shut ourselves off or numb out to these. So human emotions like anger, resentment, jealousy, fear, frustration, right? Those things will come up because we are human. Now, as we get better at recognizing those human emotions, we don't need to get stuck in them. We can feel them and then quickly transmute them if we want. The positive emotions, which are things like contentment, happiness, compassion, gratitude, bliss, joy, maybe even creation and curiosity could be, labeled as positive emotions. So we first want to get out of the whole good, bad, because these are human emotions. We want to welcome them where they are because we're feeling them. They're there, to not deny them. And something else to understand about negative emotions is oftentimes there's an energy to those negative emotions that can motivate. So when you experience something like anger, there's energy there, right? Fear, there is energy there. You hear some of the best athletes in the world say, my fear of losing is greater than my enjoyment of winning. And they've gone on to win many championships and put up a lot of numbers. I would argue that a lot of those people haven't necessarily enjoyed the process as they've gone through it, and that maybe some of their feelings of success have been fleeting when they've got to the top because they've conditioned themselves to running off of fear. But these negative energies can put us into motion, and we can come to rely on them to be our fuel sources over the course of life. And the way that I kind of look at negative energy sources is that they're finite. Think about like filling up your gas tank. You can drive for a while on it, and then eventually it's going to hit E, and then you're going to have to fill it up with more negative emotions, right? When you look at positive emotions like joy, happiness, gratitude, that's like the light from the sun. It just doesn't burn out. You never hear of someone saying, I'm exhausted from being so joyful today. Like, man, being this happy is tiresome. It just doesn't happen that way. Like, it's almost like evergreen, right? We can run off of that for long periods of time. So, of course, it helps to orient ourselves, where possible, to more positive energy sources. But again, we are human beings. We're going to feel anger, frustration, disappointment. The one last thing I want to share with you about the emotional energy of things is that there's also feelings like depression, right? Which is a negative energy source, sadness, which don't have quite the same energizing effects as negative energy sources like fear, like frustration, like anger. So you can even see that they have a different texture to them. On the positive side of things, like peacefulness, calmness, right? Those aren't necessarily energizing. They just are positive. Things like curiosity or fascination or inspiration or bliss, like those have a different kind of energy to it. So you can start to see where these emotions fall on the spectrum of things, and which ones can be used for motivation, which ones can be used for inspiration, which ones can just be used for peace and stillness. So these are things that can deepen your awareness of where you are in your emotional energy spectrum. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your emotional energy right now or over these last few weeks, right? And it gives you an opportunity to say, okay, maybe I'm a 3 right now, or maybe I've been a 7. Just be really honest with yourself and write that number down. The third dimension of energy, right? So the bottom of the pyramid is physical, quantity of energy. Second layer is the emotional energy, quality. Third layer is your mental energy. This is the focus of your energy. Now, our focus has never been under greater siege, right? There are a lot of distractions in our world these days. You know that song, Signs, Everywhere There's Signs? That was like 30 years old. Well, now it's like notifications. Everywhere there are notifications popping up on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad, people calling you. You have people who need you at any given moment. And by the way, like these things that want your attention, they're great at hooking your attention, right? Like a lot of these things, your apps, YouTube videos, games, everything are optimized. News, TV shows are optimized using science, like how our brains work, how our emotions work to capture our attention. And so it's easy for us to go from one thing to the next, like a pinball, or just like being magnetized by others without even our own choice factoring into the equation. And you know that your mental energy is being scattered when at the end of the day, someone asks you how you did today. What did you do today? And you know that like you did a million things, but you can't name any of them. It's because your energy, your mental energy has been scattered in a bunch of different directions. The focus of your mental energy, when it's precise, it feels like a laser beam. And when it's not, it's scattered like buckshot. That's a great way of thinking about it, right? So your mental energy, when you are focused, it's like laser beam. And when you're scattered, it's like buckshot. And there's a real difference in how you show up over the course of your day. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your mental energy? 1 being like, I'm scattered all over the place. 10 being like, I'm a laser beam. Where are you in that spectrum? And the final dimension of energy at the top of the pyramid is the spiritual energy. This is the force behind the energy that you're living in. This means that the energy that you have has purpose. It has meaning. It's connected to something bigger than you. This is like your North Star energy. This is purpose-driven energy. This is really kind of like the greatest energy that I spoke about in the podcast we released 2 days ago about accessing your greatest energy. And in that episode, I talked about how when you're in a state of spiritual energy or your greatest energy, you're in that state of flow, right? Selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and then a richness, a quality of something bigger than you, something nourishing. Right? That is one of the most deeply fulfilling experiences of energy that you can have. Now, I remember when I was teaching this pyramid, the 4 dimensions of energy, to my sales team at Prudential Retirement back in 2015, 2016, near like the end of one year, beginning of other, my 7 salespeople had massive sales goals, $200 million in assets that they had to bring in through the door every single year. And every year that number reset to 0. All 7 of them had family and kids. All 7 of them had to be on the road 100 to 150 days a year away from their families to get that number hit. And I remember bringing them into the room and saying, with all that pressure, with all that stress, with being away from your family, why the hell do you do this job? And those who could answer that question, who knew why very clearly, who had the spiritual energy behind their work, they could make sense on a day-to-day basis of the frustrations that they were experiencing, of the setbacks. And the setbacks wouldn't keep them down for too long because they're like, you know what? I know why I'm doing this. But those who couldn't answer the question of why they were doing it, maybe it was just money, maybe they thought that they had to, or maybe, I don't know, proving something to someone else, which wasn't really a conscious spiritual energy source that they were striving towards. They were the ones who would get sidetracked more often or get down and destitute when, destitute is probably not the right word, they would get down and much more frustrated, get stuck there longer when they didn't know what their North Star energy was, when they didn't have the spiritual energy source defined for them. I certainly know what that was like. For most of my life, I didn't have a spiritual energy source. I was spiritually homeless, spiritually disconnected. When I found my calling of helping wake up other men to getting on the path of doing inner work and helping them to discover and live the great man within them, that is my spiritual energy source. Anytime that I'm giving from that place, as you're hearing me now, I'm feeling fulfilled and nourished. At the end of the day, I may be physically tired because my body is human, but my soul is replenished. And that is something that I carry with me every single day. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself with respect to your spiritual energy? Now, you have 4 scores that you have right now in your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual categories. I want you to take a look at the one category where you are rocking it the hardest, right? Like which one of those feels the best to you? And maybe that score isn't so high. Maybe it's just like the best score that you've got and say, you know what? Thank you for what you've done so far. Like be kind to yourself. Appreciate yourself for the best score that you got in any one of those categories. And now I want you to look at one of those 4 categories that you say, I want to upgrade. By upgrading this one arena, physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual, that I know I will experience the biggest lift. And what I would say to you is, in my experience, if like you are not hitting it in the physical category, the physical dimension, you might want to start there because like I said before, it's the foundation. So get your sleep, get your movement, get your nutrition in order before hitting anything else. And then pick the one category that you're going to go deeper into and say, all right, for this next week, for this next 30 days, my theme is upgrading my emotional energy. What tools do I have available to me to help upgrade my mental focus or my emotional energy? And that's going to require a little extra research on your part. There's a much more extended conversation I do about that where I provide tools, but I'm doing these shorter solo episodes. So maybe at a future point, if you like this episode, I'll do a deeper dive with Brian and we can go into some of the tools that are available to help you upgrade in each of those categories. But take this place to do the inventory, look at where you're doing well, congratulate yourself, and then find the one dimension that you're going to upgrade. So finally, physical energy is your quantity of energy. Your emotional energy is the quality of your energy. The mental energy is the focus of your energy, and the spiritual energy is the force and the purpose behind your energy. Over the last 5 years, I've seen the 4 dimensions of energy transform so many lives. And if this was something that was powerful for you, please leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, pointing to this particular episode as a starting place for people to jump in, because that way someone else can get the same benefit that you just experienced. Thank you.